Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. Welcome to this DCTV series about the network of global corporate control. Today's segment is pre-recorded and is about how to tell bona fide news from fake news and real news. Also to tell fake whistleblowers from real whistleblowers and fake money and real money. We'll also talk about the alternative media. Thanks to DCTV and Maurice Jackson, studio producer, and Cruce Starnes, who's on audio and prompter. This series has been on DCTV for nearly 2 years. I've been answering your questions in the archives that are uploaded after each segment airs. When YouTube refuses to upload a segment, I upload it on archive.org. That's where the segments on gold, the military, and secret societies have been uploaded. It's hard to convince people with logic. They like pictures more. They still don't understand that Greek and Puerto Rican debt and all other country debt is all getting offset against the $2 quadrillion in bonds held in the global debt facility. And these debts, the country debts that are actually scams, would crash their pensions. The crash up in the markets, which the gloom and doom pundits are yammering about, is very unlikely because just about all the world's assets are held in the global debt facility, which is a trust that the Vatican used to own and is now managed by the 180 ministers of finance on the board of governors of the World Bank and IMF. It's owned by its beneficiaries, which is all of humanity. I vote the 17% shares of the United States on the board of governors of the World Bank and IMF until the United States Constitution of 1789 goes back into effect. I now speak for the other members of the board and governors until they go on record in writing to retract what I've said. None of them has. This fact is slowly convincing many people. I tweeted this argument on the 23rd of December 2016. The $2 quadrillion that is owed by the Fed has been fully documented, and there are UCC-1 financing statements filed with the Secretaries of State in 10 of the states where Federal Reserve banks are located. When the Secretary of State for Illinois illegally tried to invalidate the lien against the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, that is when I sent priority mail letters to all of the Washington embassies, asking these ambassadors to clear statements with the ministers of finance of these countries that are on the board of governors of the World Bank. And they did. We informed the Secretary of State of Illinois that UCC financing statement against the Fed of Chicago was valid. I also obtained clearance by the Board of Governors on a press release on the global currency reset. This is also fully documented. Here is my comment on March 6, 2015, saying that I was going to issue the press release on the global currency reset in 48 hours. On the 9th of March, I put another comment up stating that none of the embassies had objected and that the PressWire press release had been retweeted a number of times. When PressWire took the press release down after it had been up on the internet for a number of years, this only damaged PressWire. The top media case that I reported on Twitter in January convinced people with logic. It reported Trowbridge's second foreclosure case. None of the federal district courts outside the District of Columbia have jurisdiction. I made this argument using reasoning to convince people that I'm overseer mandate trustee of the global debt facility containing the world's assets and monetary gold reserves. The following comment accusing me of being controlled opposition just appeared in my internet archived video on DCTV. My post was quickly removed by Karen, controlled opposition. Well, now I see. And what I responded was, I am tweeting this. Larry David is a sock puppet and is lying. The banking cartel is only calling attention to its stupid tactics this way. This is a false accusation. First of all, I did not block any earlier comment. Second of all, if you look at my comment, it's clear that there can be no controlled opposition when I am uncovering a cover-up. Just think about it. How do you know I'm not controlled opposition? There has to be a hidden agenda somewhere. A person who is ending a cover-up cannot be controlled opposition. What hidden message is buried in ending a cover-up? The banking cartel likes to think it's being smart, but this is just plain stupid. I've caught out the banking cartel in just about every conceivable way. This would be funny if we weren't talking about plans to end humanity. Guess what? A critical mass has already found out that the cover-up is there and it's ending. The currency scam is over. In yesterday's tweet, the U.S. is not surrendering despite traitors, agents of the banking cartel. I answered a question about Jose Rizal, and the banking cartel interfered with that. And then, when I corrected the broken link, the banking cartel then broke another link about Jose Rizal's life. The banking cartel doesn't realize that these attempts at censorship are backfiring. This strategy underscores the fact that the banking cartel's attempt at world domination is doomed. In a documentary that I showed about the failure of the United States empire called Imperial Decay, there was a statement that the United States could not accept failure. I showed this video in the DCTV segment called May You Live in Interesting Times. And I'm showing in this teleprompter, the teleprompter for that show. Of course, the United States empire is simply a product of state capture by the banking cartel. This is a fact that many are now learning. One of the signs of state capture was when I was trying to answer the question why the United States had an empire when this policy didn't match public opinion polls on foreign policy preferences of Americans. I already knew in 2008 that there was a mismatch between what the Americans want and what their foreign policy is. After Donald Trump's bogus election, even more people have started to be convinced that there's some kind of a mismatch between what the American people want and what they're getting. That's called state capture. It's taken some time, but people are now aware that there's interference with my links and that this interference is just more proof that the one bank it's present and it's trying to continue its domination, but when people know it's there, it doesn't really manage to continue. People keep asking me, when are we going to get down to brass tacks? When are we going to start replacing the paper currencies of the one bank in a global currency reset? The short answer is when we've convinced enough people what is really true. This is harder than you think because of the mind control technologies. As I've said many times, I'm working together with the world's people on this. Pete Thornton, a whistleblower who kept the United States from destroying the Bureau of Engraving and Printing plant in Fort Worth, Texas, advised me to save a copy of the YouTube video where Poland's Minister of Defense was answering a question from a Polish citizen about this mind control technology. I think we're making progress. You'll have to let me know at the end of this segment in the archives whether you agree. And I've put in the teleprompter an email which I sent on the 23rd of December about a person who was working for Donald Trump. Nita, on rereading this post, I see that the Fusion Center removed the link on the comment that I mailed and tweeted to Donald Trump. Here it is again, and this was asking Donald Trump to admit that the Constitution of 1789 is in effect, is not in effect. There's a lot of attention now given to fake news. Back in 2014, I was talking to you about this problem and told you that Harold Lasswell had a control analysis to help you analyze the news. The New York Times is belatedly trying to convince us that what it does is its job in letting the public know what the public needs to know. But that is untrue. The New York Times is merely a handmaiden to the owners, the network of global corporate control. Myers McDougall was my professor of international law at Yale Law School. Myers was from Mississippi, and he was a giant of a man, both literally and figuratively. Myers had all the time in the world for his students, and many of them became famous, like Circuit Judge Jose Cabranes, who said Myers McDougall was without a doubt the greatest international lawyer of his time. Myers taught that law was part of the other disciplines, including political science and sociology. Myers teamed up with Harold Lasswell, also said to be the most original and productive sociologist and political scientist of his time. Lasswell wanted to know who was in charge of the media and came up with control analysis to find out. Who owns this newspaper? What are their aims? What are their political allegiances? Do they attempt to set editorial policy? Does the fact that they're a Republican account for the newspaper's repeated attacks on the royal family? Are they fully subject to any kind of legal constraints? How does the editor decide what to put in the paper? The network of global corporate control lost their desperate attempt to corrupt the internet before we dismantled the Federal Reserve and the Bank for International Settlements, which are part of the network of global corporate control. And there was a quote about me in an article. Karen Udis, World Bank insider, says who's behind the throne. The degree of control of the mainstream press in suppressing stories of this magnitude certainly supports the plus one paper in its conclusion that they constitute a single conglomerate by interlocking boards of directors. She is on Facebook, and Karen Hudes is also on Google News and in many YouTube videos. This is likely to be a crazy year which could bring the world out of the bankster-caused depression, or it could fail and make things much worse. Let's side with her and improve the whole world. Since then, there's been no further stories in the mainstream press about me. This is because the banking cartel doesn't think I'm newsworthy. In one of my posts last November, I said, critics accuse me of working for the cabal. There are many choices in the alternative media that are actually really there to put spin on things and confuse people. One way to spot disinformation in the alternative media is to see whether someone has earned an audience over time. Although I started reporting corruption inside the World Bank 7 years after I was retaliated against, I only started showing up in the alternative media in 2013. The fact that there's only been one article in the mainstream media, Newsweek on Espanol, is one sign that I'm the real deal. For people who are skeptical about whether there's really a large store of the world's gold, other precious metals, and Treaty of Versailles bonds, and other treasure in the global debt facility, just look at the attempts to steal these assets, including Wolfgang Struck's latest attempt. I just got another email from Wolfgang Struck the day before I taped this segment. I'm not even bothering to answer it. Humanity's wealth is going back to humanity in minting currencies and exchanging them for paper currencies that are worthless. There are also going to be local currencies issued by villages and towns. For those people who are sure there's no way out of the doom and gloom scenarios, pay attention to how the BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, respond, as well as the rest of the United States allies like Japan and Germany. Look also at the stakeholders in the United States, like the National Guard. And there was a dismissal of the National Guard's representative on the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Michael Bobek. He was a National Guard flag officer fired for alleged adultery. And two-star General Wayne Grigsby, the commander of the 1st Infantry, he was also dismissed for no reason. It might have had something to do with the fact that I wrote all of the adjutants general about the troops of the UN on U.S. soil. The main job of the Overseer Mandate Trustee is to prevent people from stealing the world's gold. I talked about this in September 2016 and showed a picture of the Overseer Mandate Trustee standing on a pile of people trying to steal the world's gold. I've been working together with the world's whistleblowers for many years. I'm happy to share what I've been learning from them. One of the biggest surprises is that people are being hijacked by very advanced military technology. It's from electromagnetic waves and scalar waves. Victims of this modern form of torture are called targeted individuals. We discussed this problem in a recent DC TV segment showing you Poland's Minister of National Defense discussing psychotronic weaponry used against the people in Poland. The video clip was uploaded on YouTube on March 14, 2016, and I also copied that clip. Last week, Dr. Catherine Horton, who lives in Switzerland, sent me the following email on mind control technologies and suggested and targeted individuals. Subject: mind control technologies and targeted individuals. Dear Karen, I wrote to you a while back about the use of mind control technologies and directed energy weapons on innocent civilians everywhere in the Western world. You advised me that I should start working on this by myself, which I did. I've now built some small groups who are autonomously working towards having this problem tackled, and we're trying to help the victims. However, I'm turning back to you because you have contact with the embassies and work with the Coalition for the Rule of Law. We desperately need support from the coalition because the problems we have uncovered are too big for the victims to handle by themselves. What we've uncovered are extremely large programs of systematic mutilation of the general population with microwave weapons combined with clandestine I'm trying to read the teleprompter. With clandestine infections with nanotechnology. I think we're talking about Morgellons. These programs seem to be run by the intelligence agencies, which, as we know, thanks to you, are all one agency, which is headquartered in Switzerland. There's much more horrific stuff going on, e.g., people's brain activity is read out, analyzed by a supercomputer live, and their brain function is then forced with targeted irradiation of the head. This was confirmed by many individual whistleblowers, e.g., Dr. Barry Trower, Dr. Robert Duncan, etc. I've systematically turned to every official source of help and got rejected. Meanwhile, I'm being nonstop mutilated with microwaves inside my own home, such that it's crippling and I can barely continue working. I turned to the police, the criminal police, the military police, and they all refused to help. As a German citizen living in Switzerland, I also turned to the German ambassador, Dr. Otto Lampe, who also refuses to help and thereby disobeys Consular Law Article 5 that says that he has to provide assistance. Please, Karen, could you possibly raise the issue of targeted individuals and systematic mutilations with directed energy weapons and nanotechnology with the Coalition for the Rule of Law? This happens all around the world, but is particularly extreme in Europe, Japan, and the US. Please, could you also raise it with the embassies that they provide assistance to their citizens also abroad in these cases? I cannot describe to you the horrific nightmare that the victims have through the day and night. The intelligence agencies put them on surveillance lists on a whim and then take these on a list to be outlaws with whom they can do whatever they want. I myself was in the London High Court 3 times trying to get an emergency injunction against British intelligence in spring 2016. I was assaulted, received death threats, and survived an assassination attempt. Since then, I'm literally shot to pieces. This is quite normal for the victims of the intelligence agencies. There are thousands of victims, and they're systematically hounded and mutilated to death. What they're put through are literally death camp experiments inside their own home. When I went public about the abuse I'm suffering, I received so many victim emails, e.g. from single moms with autistic children, telling me that they've been advised for years. These are the victims of the 21st century's concentration camps. Please, Karen, could you raise it with the authorities and the coalition? Victims cannot be helped if all sources, doctors, lawyers, ambassadors, deny the victims help. I'm so glad that people said that they're going to tidy up Fukushima, but they also need to tidy up these nanoparticles and nanotech that are being purposefully spread everywhere into our environment. And they need to stop the directed energy assaults that are crippling people and destroying their lives. Best wishes, Catherine. P.S. You can follow my work here, and in the teleprompter you'll see her website. I told Dr. Horton I would publish her email, but for now I must focus on the global currency reset to exchange currencies. People are going to be working at grassroots levels and organizing their own study groups. This means that the change is going to come mostly voluntarily as the elites realize that there's no future for the one world order. The biggest immediate change is going to be a result of individuals realizing that the orders from the network of global corporate control do not matter because all of humanity is one and we do not condone what they're doing. Thank you for listening to another segment of the Network of Global Corporate Control. Today's segment is helping you figure out what the truth is. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis, on this series about the Network of Global Corporate Control.